Hey, how's it going? Got another video. We're going to do a reaction video to one of my favorite content creators. He's a stand-up comedian. He's a member of the LGBTQ community, and he is a common sense warrior. So I think that highlighting common sense warriors is important. It's one of the highlights and the reasons that I'm making the type of content that I am. And I think one of the most powerful voices is a voice from a member within the LGBTQ community, because that community is being hijacked right now by a very small group within a very small group. And for an outsider who doesn't take the time to peel the layers back and to see what's going on and to see that it's not a group effort, won't take the time to look and to see, wait a minute, most of the LGBTQ community does not think it's okay to have kids at drag shows, does not think it's okay for kids to medically transition before they're adults, does not think it's okay to indoctrinate kids with inappropriate books in libraries. They just don't. The vast majority of the LGBTQ community is not interested in any of that shit. And just like the women are starting to get more loud in the sports areas where they're getting pushed out because of biological males beating them and breaking all their records. Well, a lot of the LGBTQ community who is not okay with this is speaking out more, and it's building steam. So Rivera, he is funny. I love his sense of humor. I would listen to him whether he was LGBTQ or not, but it just so happens that in my mind his voice carries a slight bit more weight because these voices are super important. So let's hear what he's got to say about why he stopped supporting the LGBTQ community.
I want to take a second to talk about why
Oh, and as always, I'm not going to have anybody on here where I do a video to where I'm not sold hook, line, and sinker on their content. So I'm going to put as many links as I can of theirs in my description. And I haven't just watched one video. Oh, that's a pretty cool stop right there. But I haven't just watched one video of any creator that I do a whole video on. Maybe a short, come across some relevant information, something funny. But if I'm doing a reaction video, it is because I have paid attention to this content creator and I'm picking up what they're putting down.
as a gay man, have stopped supporting the LGBTQ community.
He's unbothered.
What's up, everybody? Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. Before we get started, I want to ask that you comment, smash the like button if you can, and please subscribe. I put off making this video because I really didn't want to make it, because I do actually care about the community, but it really isn't fair the way that the LGBT community has weaponized what it is we are and turned everything into either homophobia or transphobia, and it's just not a good strategy. But for some reason they want to keep pushing it, like drag shows for kids.
You are such an awesome mom for bringing your kid out to a family-friendly drag show, ladies and gentlemen.
Have nothing to do with our rights.
How old are you? You're 9.
I've been to a million drag shows. 2 of my best friends were actually drag queens at different points in my life. I would go with them, I would help them get dressed, I would help them do all the stuff they had to do to prepare for their shows, and drag shows are for adults. There's usually going to be sexual humor.
I've been working so hard, I've actually worked my butthole right off.
There's usually going to be a lot of innuendo.
Minty fresh.
In some cases, people actually showing body parts.
Could you imagine if this was a heterosexual show where it was men and women up there doing their thing and being provocative and being naked, showing off body parts? Could you imagine the blowback? No pun intended. Was there a pun there?
And it's a great thing for adults that are ready for that. But to subject a kid to that,
Are you confused yet?
that's why the legislation was introduced, because a lot of people were like, drag shows in general, yeah, we should have the right to have drag shows for adults. And nobody's had that problem.
A man shouldn't dress up like a woman, and a woman shouldn't dress up like a man.
For years, this hasn't been a debate. It's just when you start doing it for the kids that people do express concerns, not only because maybe they don't want to address that with their kids just yet, or they want to decide how they even broach those topics with their kids, just as far as sex and gender and people being different sexual orientations. Like, in a lot of cases, whether a parent wants to explain that or not, at some point they're going to have to explain it. But sometimes people want to do it on their own timeline, and sometimes people think that their kids are too young to be introduced to that. I don't have a problem.
That's one of the things, and this isn't even one of the major issues to be focused on, but it's just there's so many components to this, as are most things that we are very much against, in whatever ideology that we have. One of the things that really is too bad is that this movement, this way of thinking, has taken so much power from parents and has taken the parents' ability in a lot of cases. There's states now to where, like, literally they will come and take your children. The government, CPS, will come take your children if you are not a gender affirming parent. So it's terrible that the parents have not even been on the front line of this situation. Any other mental health condition, because even transgender people would agree that gender dysphoria is a mental health condition, any other mental health condition would be handled in a much different way.
Problem with that. And if you notice, it's a very, very small minority, even within the community, that are really trying to make this a big deal. When it comes to things like transgenders in sports, that was never a thing that we were concerned with as a right when I was coming up. I come from a generation where transsexuals was what we used to address them as. Transgender has become the umbrella that includes non-binary.
The they and them.
And that is confusing for a lot of people.
I'm not into all the other bullshit.
And then there's a whole debate about sex versus gender.
It is man.
Well, there's some of us that when it comes to certain things, we do just take biological sex into account. And you have to. All you have to do is feel a man and feel a woman. And you know right away that one is stronger. There are the outliers where you'll have...
I've always felt like the whole LGB portion of that community is in direct odds with the TQ and whatever else, where the non-binary thing, and you can identify as whatever you want, and you can be a man that identifies as a woman, and like just so many different things where your gender is fluid and that you can be whatever you want to be. The entire, like, you don't have a gay community if you don't have same-sex attraction. You don't have same-sex attraction if there's no such thing as a man or a woman, and they're fluid, and it's this and it's that. The entire, right? I mean, a gay man is gay because they like other men. They are sexually attracted to other men. Gay women are gay because they are sexually attracted to other women, right? So there's no definition for that. But I have seen a lot of these dudes who say they are women, and once they become women, they claim to like women, which doesn't make them heterosexual cuck men. It makes them lesbian. Trans lesbian, I think.
A female
Don't quote me on that.
bodybuilder or female power lifter that was born female.
There goes
It's a
JP.
fact. The new economy creates
Oh, my goodness.
1,700
Yeah,
new
JP.
millionaires every single day. Like, really let that sink in.
Women only.
That may be stronger than some men, but for
Great
the
channel.
most part, we all can agree that men and women are built differently. So when you have transgender people getting into women's sports, it's just not fair. And you have these young girls,
time.
biological females, that have worked sometimes their entire lives, or
okay, I somebody please explain to me in the comments, or just how do we get to the point to where there is a man and really, according to some of the information, gave a speech to the women's team of his school and said that he would be coming on to the women's team in 1 year because he had to do HRT for a year. So literally a year. It took a year out of his life to transition. Goes over to the women's side, coming into the women's side ranked 400 or 500th in the college ranks as a man, and destroys the women's records. Is winning by body links. Make that shit make sense, man. I wasn't so long ago where people would have laughed about that. That would have gotten, that story that I just told would have gotten as many people taking it seriously as alien invaders coming and shoot. I guess that's a fucking thing now too. Oh my gosh. What's going on?
At least their entire school careers to get to a particular place in a particular sport, be eligible for certain scholarships, be eligible to possibly go to the Olympics. And now, because a man has decided to transition into a woman, we're supposed to just accept that now this biological female's dreams are being dashed because somebody else chose to identify as something. When it comes to drag queens reading in schools or libraries, a lot of people would say, if it's in a library, that means you probably have to take your kid to it, and that's your choice. But when you have situations like what happened in Houston, Texas, there were 2 child sex offenders from the Drag Queen Story Hour.
This is Albert Garza, a registered child sex offender, convicted in 2008 for molesting an 8-year-old boy. This is also him, Tatiana Malanina, his drag queen alter ego. This is who's been reading to kids at Houston Public Library since last year.
The Houston Library actually had to put out a statement apologizing.
A statement from the Houston Public Library says, in part, we failed to complete a background check as required by our own guidelines. We deeply regret this oversight. No participant is ever alone with children.
For not doing their proper homework. Okay, so then you take things like genetic females saying, I don't want to be in a
women's locker room
with a naked man.
Trans women are women!
Or a person that...
And that's another thing that blows my mind. These little fragments of things that just continually just make my mind explode behind this whole situation. When did it happen that a woman or a girl says, I'm not comfortable, I don't feel safe? That there is a group of men and other women that are there to protect the feelings of a biological male. If one girl says, hey, listen, I don't want to be changing in the locker room with a biological male. If I'm in there and I'm nude and I'm trying to get myself together, I don't want to look over and see a penis. When did this shit become like they are advocating for this now? Leah Thomas is a national champion.
Has a penis.
Excuse me?
I don't care how they identify.
A transgender woman says she is being discriminated against after using the women's locker room at Evergreen State College. The problem is she's still technically a male, and young high school girls from Olympia use the same locker room.
As a person with a mother and sisters, if my mother or sister...
How does this conversation go any further than that? There is an individual in a locker room that is given for women, and this individual, regardless of what they identify as, wait for it, has a dick. Right? Oh, well, get him out of there. Get him, her, them, they, Zer, whatever the fuck you are that you think you are, cool. But you cannot be in the women's locker room. When did what I say become hate speech? Because that's what they will label what I'm saying right now. This simple, basic, obvious truth. Come on, man. Make it make sense. Come on, man.
Sisters said that, I'd be like, yeah, I understand that. I respect that. If you don't want to be naked in front of a man,
Now, this is a women's locker room.
or you don't want a man getting naked in front of you, and you can identify as whatever you want. But the fact is, if you have a penis, you are a male. If
Right.
you want to say a man is gender and sex is male, you're a male. And a lot of females don't want naked men in front of them, don't want to be naked in front of men. So who am I, or who is anybody in the trans community to say, no, women, now you have to be comfortable with that, or you're not allowed in the space now.
Right.
Now you're not allowed in the space because you're
They're
transphobic,
kicking whole
you're
teams
hateful,
out.
you're discriminatory. And you had the situation in We Spa.
A woman complained about a transgender woman in the female section of the spa.
We Spa, if you're not familiar, is a bathhouse in LA where they do massages and facials and stuff like that. And there's a women's side and a men's side. So a man that has female on his ID who identifies as being non-binary shows his ID, goes into the women's locker room. The women aren't comfortable with it. There's also young underage girls in there that are seeing this man naked. One of the mothers complained about it, said
There's a man in the sauna.
that she wasn't comfortable with it. It
Really?
turns into a huge situation where Antifa shows up, which Antifa really has no dog in the fight. Antifa is really about chaos, but they get involved and it turns into an entire thing.
Look at that
because
shit.
it's immediately branded as transphobia. And then if you do the research on the case, which I'll put a link below for you guys to read, and I'll probably cover it on another episode. But if you look into the case, the person that identified as transgender, that was male by birth and did have a penis and was naked in the women's side, turned out to be a 3-time sex offender. The first one, he had been caught staring in an 85-year-old woman's window while jerking off. He had a fleshlight, he had a knife, he wasn't wearing any pants. So the second time he got busted, he was like at a truck stop and he was wearing fishnets with a skirt with no underwear. This was in public. And then the third time, it was an incident like the We Spa situation, except for it was a different spa in a different part of LA. Now, I don't know what kind of trans people you've ever dealt with in your life, but the trans people that I dealt
What do you say to that? When that case is laid out, and somehow this individual that they are talking about, this 3-time convicted sex offender, gets a platform on the local news to spout off about how they were discriminated against. I believe that Joe Biden might have coined the greatest phrase in the history of the world for this time. Come on, man. Like, come on, man.
were always discreet and understood. Maybe it wasn't going to be the most comfortable situation if they were completely nude in any kind of situation, like a locker room situation. I remember I went to a gym with a few of my trans friends. Very beautiful, could easily pass for genetic females. And because they knew the way that that would work out, they would go in the women's locker room, they'd put their stuff in their locker and get out their workout clothes. They would go to the stall and they would change in the stall. And nobody ever had a problem with them being there because there was never confirmation. People could suspect all they wanted, but they weren't doing anything creepy. They were just there to work out like anybody else. And then there's a school being sued right now where there's a trans woman that became part of a sorority, and the sorority girls say that the trans woman who was born a man has been being creepy with them and keeps staring at them while they're trying to do the stuff because they live in a sorority house. So
I didn't realize I had my little thing cut off here, so I don't know if you care to hear, but plaintiffs are now required as a condition of membership, alleges the suit, to reside in the same house as the 6'2", 260-pound man who stares at them, asks them about their intimate past, makes notes about their statements, and takes photographs of them without their consent, and intimidates them by threatening to publicly label them as bigots if they raise concerns. A sorority house A house full of young women, 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, going to college. What? I need the clip. I need to get a little clip, man. Come on, man. I'll push that button 70 times a video.
It's really not fair for us to just decide that women have to either be comfortable with this or they're branded as perpetuating some kind of hate. And I get it. If you don't want people to misgender you and you identify as a woman, that's fine. Most people are willing to respect that. But you have to understand that there is a suspension of disbelief. And we are kind of signing on to a social contract that, yes, we are going to respect you and we are going to treat you as women. But when it comes down to it, there are certain things that are for genetic females and you have to respect that. And what's happening is they're constantly crying wolf in the LGBT community and saying, now this group is coming after us. Now this particular legislation is against us. And then you read the legislation and you're like, okay, well, that's not what that says at all. Like there was one not too long ago where they were saying that they were going to ban gender affirming care. And then you look into it and it's for gender affirming care for kids. So if you're under the age of 18, at all under the age of 18, I don't think you should be getting elective procedures, surgical changes,
not.
medical changes, changes to your hormones.
Just another one of those questions. How is that even a thing? How is there any scenario that we say that it is okay as a society? These are doctors. These are big, huge institutions. Yes, there is a scenario where we think overall, the vast majority, generally speaking, we believe that if we offer the ability for even some juveniles to permanently alter themselves physically because of the way they feel in adolescence and childhood, we think that there should be an option on the table which allows them to get double mastectomies or to have their penis cut off or to take cross-sex hormones or to have puberty blockers. How are we even at a place where that shit's even on the fucking table?
All of that is irreversible, and the community keeps trying to tell everybody that this is fully reversible, but it's not. It's just not the way time works. It's not the way biology works. And the doctors that are telling you this are doctors that want to have your kids on medication for the rest of their lives, steroids and hormones for the rest of their lives, because then they have lifelong business. And the groups that are really fueling this as far as LGBT groups go, these are people that are also trying to continue to make money, because once the discrimination stops, once there's no oppressor, suddenly those people will have to go out and get regular jobs. They want job security. So their best course of action is to just continue to make these people believe that everybody that doesn't agree with everything that they say is now a transphobe, a hateful person, part of some hate group, and it's really not fair to put people in that position and make people either have to go your way or face social consequences, professional consequences, because these people will go after your job if they don't like what it is you said or they don't like your point of view, and they'll justify all of it because you are a hateful person, and everybody needs to know that. So when I've seen the way that the LGBT community has handled this entire situation, then I kind of have to be like, yeah, if you're not willing to compromise in any way, because on none of these things will the far left trans people concede. Yeah, maybe that's a little too far. Maybe we can rethink that. It's all either you're with them or you're transphobic. And that's just not going to be a winning strategy. People aren't going to be bullied into believing things are something other than what they are. And it's setting a lot of them.
That's a very good point. That's not a winning strategy. And what's going to happen is that all of these social justice warriors are going to go down in a blaze of glory screaming about how racist and how bigoted and how transphobic and how homophobic everybody is. The thing I hope for is I just hope that the LGB can jump off that fucking train before it runs off a cliff. Because I'm telling you, the vast majority of people in the LGBTQ community are not okay with all this nonsense going on.
movement back. It's leaving people with a bad taste in their mouth because people are feeling like they're getting bullied into accepting things that they don't always want to accept. Like, I remember when gays, we were trying to get our rights. We really did ingratiate ourselves to people, and people got to see the human side of us. But when all you see is this group of people that in a lot of cases is represented by the fringe and doesn't look relatable at all to anybody in straight society, and sometimes to me as a gay man, I look at some of these people and I'm like, yeah, I don't know what you're doing, and I don't have to support it. I don't have to decide that suddenly I have no beliefs, I have no ideas, because you have decided you are now my moral compass. It's just not a fair way to do things, and a lot of people, including myself, aren't going to go for it. Other LGBT people are against it in a lot of cases. Other trans people are against it in a lot of cases. But for some reason, the LGBT community wants to continue to run this play that is not going to be successful. You are not going to be able to bully people into compelled speech. You're not going to be able to bully people into letting you decide when their kids can transition. It's going to build up a lot of resentment. It's already built up a lot of resentment. It's been terrible for the community. It's been terrible for actual transsexual people, because what I was saying about crying wolf is with the legislation that's been introduced, you say these things, and then we, as logical-minded people, gay and straight, look at the legislation and actually read it. We're like, oh yeah, I agree with that. That's cool. That's not hate. That's not anti-trans. That's pro-kids. That's not anti-trans. That's pro-women. That's not an anti-trans issue. That's a pro-parents issue. So all that's happening here is that you're losing everybody, and I don't want to be a part of it. That's not what I signed on for. Anyway, let me know what you think down below in the comments. This has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, it's just amazing to me.
I typed therapy into my search engine, and one of the first recommended results was therapy near me. Now, I live in New York, so I had a lot of
It's unbelievable the types of things that are becoming almost mainstream, if not already mainstream. The thought processes, the ideology. The woke ideology is a poison. And the deeper the dive I take into the woke ideology, the more I see that these things that are happening in America, they're the same things that have happened throughout history that have formed these totalitarian, fascist governments, man. Like, this is crazy. This is just one aspect. I can't believe that we're at this point. So anyway, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. This one's a little bit longer, but I am going to continue to react to these content creators that have some good sense. I'm not going to take any time really unless it's on a little short or something. I'm not going to spend time doing reactions on people I don't agree with. We're trying to get the word out. I just want you to know the reasons I don't agree. I don't care about trying to, So, thank you. Leave a comment. Let's have a conversation. And see you next time.